Recently, I went through the movie Darlings, which was on an OTT platform, and I believe that a lot of people have loved it because it depicts domestic violence and the effect on the woman because of domestic violence. Now, domestic violence and its impact on the wife or the husband is very commonly known, so I'm not going to talk about it. But what I really want to point out is that domestic violence has a huge impact on the children who are witnessing this violence. In the movie, of course, Alia Bhatt did not have a child, and this part is not depicted. But in our clinical practice, we have come across many clients who as children had witnessed domestic violence, and because of that they grew up in an environment of chronic stress, anxiety and toxic emotions like anger, frustration, helplessness, insecurity or feeling unsafe, and this is not healthy for the child. So domestic violence done by either partner in the presence of children makes it toxic multifold, because now we are not just affecting the two people who are concerned or who are involved in the violence, but it is getting carried forward to the future generations. Hence, domestic violence is something that needs to be understood, that needs to be corrected. Remember, children who even quietly watch their parents fighting, screaming, shouting or physically fighting, they oftentimes up until adulthood also have flashbacks and visions of these fights. So we've had clients who've narrated that even as 30 or 40-year-olds, they have images of their mother being beaten up or the mother covered in blood as the father was beating her up. So these things affect these children, and as adults sometimes they may also show symptoms of PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. Chronic violence or domestic violence over say 10, 15 or 20 years sometimes can cause complex PTSD amongst adults. Domestic violence makes a child feel extremely unsafe, and from childhood the child starts feeling that he or she is insecure. So the child starts having sleep issues, the child may become hyper vigilant or hyperactive, going towards borderline ADHD kind of behaviors. So domestic violence makes a child feel extremely unsafe and insecure in their own home. Sometimes we've had adults who say that as children they did not want to go to school because they were scared that if they left the mother alone, the mother would be beaten up and the mother's life would be in danger. Because of this, even going to school would become an anxiety causing effect. So remember that children get affected by domestic violence in more ways than one. It affects the physiology, it affects the psychology, and it affects a lot of their subsequent behaviors that come out as coping structures from this violent environment. And many times unknowingly they also become the perpetuators of similar kind of domestic violence, even against their wishes. Even if they do not want to do it, they end up abusing their partners. Just like in the movie when Hamza says that, you know, it is not the alcohol but it is me and I am the bad person, somewhere we know that he does recognize that beating up his wife is a problem, but he is unable to control it. This also comes when a child in the early stages of growing up years has seen violence, and violence has become so normalized that it becomes an integrated part of the child's psyche. So when this child grows up, even against their conscious wishes, they also end up becoming violent and perpetuating this domestic violence cycle. So domestic violence is definitely something that we need to be aware of, and it needs to be stopped. Remember, domestic violence is not limited to a certain class or class of people. It is not connected to education or economic status or even countries or races. Domestic violence is there in every human being who is in a relationship in one form or the other. So domestic violence we have also seen among families who are very well off, who are also educated. We have seen it amongst families from whatever strata of the society you would like to name it. This is only happening simply because we do not recognize it, we do not do anything about it. So let us recognize it, let us be aware, and for the sake of our children, let us stop it and nip it at the bud.